Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. I knew to wait for it. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions concerning this watch. This is a 2019 release that turned out to be the vanguard of the second generation Zeitwerk family. You're looking at the Zeitwerk Date, a watch that incorporates more than just the addition of a date. There is lots to love here and lots of it to love, as this white gold watch is quite large at 44.2 millimeters in diameter, 12.9 millimeters thick, and from lug tip to lug tip 52 millimeters with a 21 millimeter spacing in between the lugs. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and it wears nicely. Big though. You can see on the edge, the lugs are out to the periphery of my wrist on both sides. I'm going to zoom out as far as I can to show you this watch in proportion to the rest of my wrist. I'm going to opine that yes, I could wear this and wear this well, but if your wrist is any smaller than mine, you're going to want to go with the Zeitwerk 42, not one of those larger pieces. The striking watches and of course the Date are bigger versions of the Zeitwerk, except in profile. So yes, it is 44.2 in diameter, but somehow, despite the additional complication, functionality, and a doubled power reserve, it is thinner than the original Zeitwerk. This is just 12.9 millimeters thick. So 52 lug-to-lug is going to be the limiting factor for a lot, but it'll also slide pretty easily under a cuff. You look at it on my wrist, especially with the domed bezel, yeah, that will slide under a dress sleeve. It's massive. You really feel it. The watch is substantially built. You can see we've got a Lange strap, calfskin on the bottom, brand new, no wear, large rectangular symmetrical scales on the top, an expensive cut of the animal, largely because this particular scale pattern, typically found on the belly of the gator, it's a small patch. Most of the gator is not like this. So that small patch is premium real estate. That's why these large rectangular symmetrical scales are often found on the most expensive watches from the best brands. Medium brown, semi-gloss. There is some bolstering or stuffing to give it volume. We have a folded edge, a monotone stitch. And then you can see we've got a white gold pin buckle. And two things I always shout out about Lange's pin buckles. You can see that one was made by FTR, which I believe is a Richemont-owned company that handles cases and buckles and bracelets. You can see that there's an elevated bridge, and the strap sits in the buckle rather than stacking up underneath. There's also this little retaining bar, so if you're like me and you have to use the smallest hole, or you might even be punching smaller holes, a tightly strapped strap can get pinned on the pin and be difficult to extricate. That little bar prevents it from sinking down all the way onto the pin, so making it easier to remove from a small wrist. Also, the strap made in France and the buckle made in Switzerland. You can see that little Swiss hallmark there. Lange doesn't make cases and clasps, so it's always going to be a supplier building those parts. It looks like the case was made by Centror, which is another Swiss company associated with, I believe, Audemars Piguet. Taking a look at the watch, it's a beautiful piece. It's got stepped lugs as long as 10-2. The case back is stepped in, so though it's 12.9 thick, it actually wears smaller than that on the wrist. We've got a break between satin and polish on several facets here, including the triggers, and that's a good thing because some Lange watches are all polished. I find the medley of decoration helps to break up the sheer size of it. It's got a crown with a very sharp knurling, and as ever, winding a Zeitwerk, one of the great tactile pleasures in all of the watch hobby. Now, we've got a lot going on here on the dial, but let's start with the basics. The time bridge has not changed. This is actually German silver, but rhodium plated to give it a silvery white aesthetic. It's part of the movement. You can see it's fixed by a screw, it's decorated, it's beveled, it's snailed. We even have a pivot jewel there for the two discs that make up the minutes and the tens of minutes. So that's actually a pivot jewel of the movement. Now, what's new here is the power reserve. It doesn't look any different, but the watch now has 72 hours of power reserve rather than the original Zeitwerk's 36. That is because the mainspring has been doubled. There's now two of them. And in order to keep the dial symmetrical, which is a hallmark of the Zeitwerk, the date is now an element that orbits around. And so you can see we have two different mechanisms here. One allows me to jump the hours without having to roll through all of the minutes. And then the other allows me to jump the date, which being understated, it's just a red highlight in a stenciled aperture. It doesn't break up the symmetry of the dial, so it's super clean. It's an orbital date in the style of Moritz Grossman and Roger Smith, just even more, one might say, inconspicuous. Now, this is good, and this is great, But on the back, I think most will argue this is one of the few Langes where the dial is as dramatic as the caseback, but the caseback is a showstopper. It is also different from the original Zeitwerk. You could see the bridge anchoring the top of the barrel is no longer present. In its place, we have this double solarization, and if you look closely, you could see that all of the wheels of the winding system, as well as the ratchet wheel, they have been micro-beveled on their sides, an incredibly time-consuming execution, rarely seen even on Geneva Hallmark watches in Switzerland. And then you could see solarization, double here and then single elsewhere. A great look with those sweeping waves that are radial and diagonally curved, or I should say spiral curved. Now taking another look, you can see we have both polished screws and fire blued screws. That's part of the pleasure of this movement. You do get both. Bridges and plates are German silver, a nickel copper zinc alloy. It's basically the same thing guitar frets are made of, and it's an homage to the way watches would have been made in Germany during the 19th and early 20th century. Another homage to classical German watchmaking. This is all designed to read as a 3/4 plate, so it's not strictly speaking a 3/4 plate. That is the aesthetic. We have Streifen. We're not going to call them Geneva waves. They're stripes. And we also have a set of jewels in golden chaton cups. The jewels are pressed into the cups, and then the cups held in place by polished screws. And again, back in antique times, it would not have been advisable to try to press a jewel directly into this material for the bridges and plates. So the cup would have been made, the jewel set in the precision cup, and the cup fixed by screws. So that's why that style is used today. We have freehand engraving on both the escape wheel cock and the balance cock, with a mirror finished swan's neck on the escape, or I should say on the balance cock, and then on the escape cock we have a mirror polished cap. You can see that freehand engraving beneath. The beveling here is quite good. There's engine turning on the base plate. Now a little bit about the tech. So we have here two main springs stacked. We have a remontoir system that consists of a second locking lever. There's a little pinwheel right there that acts as an air brake. Every minute the barrel jumps the indication for the minute, and then the air brake slows down the transmission of energy through this bridge, which is now arrow straight. On the original Zeitwerk, it had sort of a broken arrow look to it. Now it's dead straight. And you can see it is satin beveled steel. And take a look here, and you can see how many internal angles, those sharp interior angles you have just on this steel component, not on both sides of it. But this little locking lever allows energy to pass to a third wheel that transfers the energy to a blue hairspring you can see just beneath it. That hairspring is sort of sandwiched between two third wheels. One third wheel gathers the energy and transfers it to the hairspring. The other third wheel is geared directly to the escapement, the fourth wheel and then the escape wheel. So once a minute that hairspring is topped off, and unlike Journe's remontoir, which reloads every second, or the Grunefeld's, which recharges every 8 seconds. This is a 1-minute remontoir because its re-energizing is timed to coincide with the jump of the minute. Also important, because we have such mainspring power and force, it's not just to keep time, it's to prevent the damage to the escapement. So it has constant force for 72 hours of operation, but also helps preserve the fragile escapement, so it's not directly driven by those huge springs. We have an enormous balance that beats away at 2.5 hertz, or 18,000 vibrations per hour. It's effectively free sprung, since the timing can't change due to concussion or shock. Most of the timing adjustments are going to be done using those eccentric masses on the balance rim, though some small ones can be done using the swan's neck or even hairspring manipulation. And if you look closely, we have an overcoil hairspring with a very centered mass for isochronous operation, that is consistent timekeeping in any physical position. What this escapement and balance, this oscillation assortment, lacks in beat rate, it makes up in mass. As you can see, that wheel is huge. This is the L0438, meaning it's Lange. 04 is the year work started. It was the third movement started that year, and then 8 means it is the 8th revision. The movement is large. You can see it's enormous, and it's 37 millimeters in diameter, so it beautifully fills this case back. The watch does have hacking seconds, which you saw just a moment ago. That does stop the seconds hand and the rest of the timekeeping. And then it's all 30 meters water resistant, but please, please, please do not attempt to swim with it. Some may ask, is this white gold or gray gold? Well, it's both. White gold and gray gold are the same thing, but gray gold is a white gold that never needs to be rhodium plated and is homogeneous in color all the way through. It's the good stuff. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.